Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sharing Stories Presents Book Summaries. Today we have Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Let's dive right into it. What does this book have to offer? Um, when you look at a spectacular collapse, right? Like a brilliant CEO who tanks a billion-dollar company or, a seemingly perfect marriage that just suddenly implodes, or even a politician who completely self-destructs right at the height of their career. What do you normally blame for that?
Well, we usually look for the external fracture. Right?
Yep.
We blame sudden shifts in the market or maybe terrible advice from consultants or just bad luck or, toxic timing.
Right, something on the outside.
Exactly. We
Yeah.
desperately want this sort of X-ray that shows us exactly where the outside world broke our plans.
But the uncomfortable truth we are exploring today is that the fatal blow almost never comes from the outside.
No, it rarely does.
Right. Our biggest obstacle isn't a lack of talent. It isn't a lack of funding. And it certainly isn't bad luck. It is our own inflated sense of importance. It is our ego.
Yeah, that's the core of it.
Bring your book to life with AI. Plotsformovies.com helps you create movie-like trailers for your book, allowing filmmakers to visualize your story, just the way you imagined it while writing. Enhance the storytelling experience to a whole new level with realistic characters, immersive voiceovers, and cinematic sound effects. No more boring stock images or generic clips. Captivate your audience, spark curiosity, make readers and filmmakers eager to explore more. Plotsformovies.com, where your story becomes cinema.
And to sort of map out how this internal sabotage works, we're looking at the insights of Ryan Holiday.
Yeah, Ryan Holiday.
He's really become one of the most prominent modern voices, I guess you'd say, translating ancient philosophy into these practical survival guides for the modern world.
He really has, yeah.
He's got millions of copies sold, translated into dozens of languages. You've probably heard of his hits like The Obstacle is the Way, The Daily Stoic, and Stillness is the Key.
Yeah, and it is deeply illuminating to look at the environment Holiday has actually built to ground this philosophy.
Oh, yeah. His whole lifestyle.
Right. He isn't writing from some, glass penthouse in Silicon Valley or, Wall Street.
No, not at all.
He intentionally stepped away from that typical hustle culture. He lives outside Austin, Texas, I believe.
Yeah, on a farm.
Exactly. He operates out of a farm with a small herd of cows, donkeys, and goats. And he runs this independent physical bookstore called The Painted Porch.
Which is such a cool detail.
It is.
Yeah.
And that setting tells you a lot about the ideas themselves. It's a philosophy grounded in dirt, in physical labor and the tangible world, rather than just the abstract pursuit of clout.
Yeah, that tangible grounding is vital because, ego is a word we just throw around so casually.
Oh, constantly.
Right, so we really need to define the parameters of what we are actually talking about here.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Holiday is drawing very heavily on Stoic philosophy.
Okay.
He uses it to demonstrate how ego basically operates as a parasite at 3 critical stages of our lives.
Right, the aspire, success, and failure stages.
Exactly. Now, we have to clarify it right up front here. He is not arguing against confidence.
Oh, yeah, that's an important distinction.
You absolutely need to believe in your own competence
Right.
to get out of bed and tackle hard things.
Right, you can't be completely devoid of self-belief.
No, of course not. What he is targeting is this pathological need to constantly prove your worth to other people. Ego, in this specific context, is this dangerous, deeply ingrained belief that you are inherently special, and therefore you're entitled to recognition without having to relentlessly put in the unglamorous work.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can succeed at anything, before we build the business or write the book, we have to start.
We do.
We have to have ambition. But our sources show that our own psychology can actually trip us up right at the starting line.
It happens so often because we blur the lines between ambition and ego.
Right? They feel very similar.
They do, but they're fundamentally different.
Yeah.
Ambition is the raw drive toward improvement. It's a focus on the work itself. Ambition says, I want to master this skill.
Okay, and ego.
Ego, on the other hand, demands the applause of mastery before the skill is even acquired.
Oh, wow.
Because when you were just starting out, you're naturally ignorant. You don't know what you're doing.
Which is a terrible feeling.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
But ambition accepts that ignorance as just the cost of entry. Ego associates that same ignorance with weakness and humiliation.
I see.
So instead of admitting we are at the beginning of a long journey, the ego forces us to, put on a mask and pretend we already possess all the answers.
Watching how ego operates in that initial aspiring phase, it really reminds me of how people approach starting a new company today.
Oh, completely.
Like, you see someone who wants to be an entrepreneur, but instead of talking to a single customer, or, I don't know, building a prototype or testing a hypothesis.
They do the fun stuff.
Yes. They spend 3 uninterrupted weeks designing the absolute perfect logo.
Oh, the logo. Yes.
And then they curate this flawless, minimalist Instagram aesthetic for the brand. And they announce their title as founder and CEO on LinkedIn.
Right. And they get all the likes and congratulations.
Exactly. They are generating this intoxicating illusion of progress. It feels like real momentum, but they haven't done a single shred of the actual invisible, difficult work required to make something valuable.
That is the mechanism of ego in a nutshell. It craves the announcement.
Right.
Talking about your future success or creating the aesthetic of success, it actually provides your brain with a premature dopamine hit.
Oh, so you feel rewarded already.
Yes. You get the emotional satisfaction of having achieved the goal without having to endure the friction, the doubt, and the sheer boredom of actually doing the work.
Wow.
The ego basically tricks you into confusing the performance of the job with the job itself.
But let me push back on that for a second.
Sure.
Because we operate in an economy that absolutely demands personal branding.
That's true.
If you want to get a manuscript published, publishers want to see your built-in audience. If you're pitching a startup, venture capitalists, they want to see a massive world-changing vision projected with absolute certainty.
Right. They want the confidence.
So isn't talking about your goals and projecting immense confidence practically a survival requirement just to get noticed in all the noise?
It is the ultimate modern trap. We reward the performance so heavily that we forget the substance.
Mm-hmm.
Holiday counters this by emphasizing what he calls the student mindset.
Mm.
He argues that attention simply does not equal achievement.
Okay.
Yes, you have to communicate your vision to get funding, but the moment you start believing your own pitch deck, the moment you prioritize the performance over the practice, the ego has completely taken the wheel.
Right.
In that aspiring phase, the ability to genuinely say, I don't know, is actually your greatest competitive advantage.
Because if you enter a room convinced you already know everything, your cup is already full.
Exactly.
You literally cannot take in new information. Your entire cognitive load is spent defending your image rather than absorbing new tactics.
And the student mindset flips that dynamic entirely. The ego asks, how can I show everyone in this room my talent? The student asks, what can I learn from the people in this room?
That's a huge shift.
It is. When you drop the facade and accept that there are people who know infinitely more than you do, you become a sponge. You absorb knowledge, you ask better questions, and you build real structural competence instead of, a fragile paper tiger.
Okay, let's follow that through line. Let's say that student mindset pays off. You put your head down, you do the quiet, unglamorous work for years, and suddenly you have a hit.
You've made it.
You achieve the goal. You have money, you have recognition, you have power. Logically, you would think this is where the ego would finally be satisfied, right?
You would think so.
You've proven your worth. But the sources argue this is actually when the parasite becomes the most lethal. Why is success exactly when the ground gets the most slippery?
Because success breeds the entitlement trap.
The entitlement trap.
Yeah. When you achieve massive recognition, the environment around you changes. People start treating you differently, and the ego starts changing the internal narrative. It whispers that you didn't just work hard or, get a little lucky with your timing. It tells you that you are fundamentally inherently special.
Oh, man.
That the rules of gravity that apply to everyone else, well, they no longer apply to you.
It's that subtle psychological shift from, I did a highly effective thing, to, I am a golden god who cannot miss.
Exactly. And the mechanics of that shift are just catastrophic. When you believe you are uniquely infallible, you stop listening to criticism.
Because why would you listen to lesser people, right?
Right. You begin filtering out the dissenting voices, the truth tellers who actually helped you get there in the first place. And you surround yourself with an echo chamber.
Just yes men.
Just yes men. You start hiring sycophants who simply validate your genius. You become fiercely protective of your reputation, which means you actually stop taking the calculated, gritty risks that made you successful in the beginning.
So you freeze up.
You become conservative, paranoid, and isolated. The very success you fought for becomes the root cause of your inevitable failure.
And what I love is the historical evidence here. I mean, Holiday uses this incredibly diverse roster of historical figures to prove this point.
He really does.
I mean, he talks about everyone from John Wooden and George Marshall to business tycoons like Howard Hughes, John DeLorean, and Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
And he even brings in political figures. Obviously, we are just impartially reporting on the content here without taking any political stance. But he looks at Richard Nixon, Napoleon, Genghis Khan, Katharine Graham, Angela Merkel.
Right. What's fascinating here is how Holiday uses these real lives, not just abstract psychology, to show how ego builds empires and then burns them down.
Yeah, let's look at Howard Hughes for a second, because if you want a perfect case study of how ego dismantles an empire, Hughes is just it.
Howard Hughes is the quintessential warning. I mean, he had immense talent, unlimited resources, and brilliant early successes in aviation and film.
He had everything going for him.
Everything. But his success built this reality distortion field. The ego convinced him he didn't need advisors, that everyone else was either incompetent or actively out to get him.
His success essentially financed his paranoia.
Yes.
Because he had so much money and power, there was just no one left to tell him no.
Nobody could check him.
Right. He stopped trusting his engineers. He stopped trusting his business partners. And that ego-driven paranoia is exactly what caused his complete physical and mental isolation.
It's tragic.
He died a miserable recluse, not because he lacked ability, but because his ego completely severed his connection to reality.
And you contrast that with someone like the legendary basketball coach John Wooden.
Yeah.
Right, another key figure, Holiday examined.
Oh, the story's amazing.
Wooden won 10 NCAA national championships. He was at the absolute pinnacle of his profession. But he actively fought against the entitlement trap.
How did he do that?
Well, at the start of every season, even after winning multiple championships, he would sit his world-class elite athletes down and spend the first practice teaching them exactly how to put on their socks and tie their shoes.
Putting on socks. These are elite athletes.
Exactly. Just to make sure they wouldn't get blisters.
He was forcing them, and I guess himself, to stay anchored to the fundamentals.
Yes.
He refused to let the championship rings elevate them above the basic granular work of the game.
That is a crucial mechanism right there.
Yeah.
Wooden survived success because he maintained the student mindset. He never allowed the applause to convince him that he had transcended the work.
So what does this all mean? Like, how does a successful person keep from falling into this trap? Is there a way to enjoy the fruits of your labor without becoming entitled?
The antidote requires a profound rewiring of how we view accomplishment. Holiday argues that success should not grant you a pass to stop working.
Okay.
Success should dramatically increase your responsibility.
I want to linger on that for a second. Success increases responsibility, not entitlement.
Yes. The ego looks at a massive achievement and says, I made it. I deserve to rest. I deserve to be catered to and served.
Right, I'm at the top of the mountain.
Exactly. But the sober mind looks at that exact same achievement and says, I have now been given more resources, a larger platform, and more influence. Therefore, I have vastly more work to do.
The work just gets bigger.
The work remains the focal point. Public applause is temporary. Public opinion is incredibly fickle. Your reputation can be destroyed overnight by a single misunderstanding or a shift in the cultural wind.
Oh, we see that all the time.
All the time. But the daily practice of your craft is real. To survive success, you have to force yourself back into the posture of a student, knowing that the moment you think you have nothing left to learn, your decline is already mathematically guaranteed.
But let's face reality here. Since success isn't a permanent state of having made it, gravity pulls everyone down eventually.
It does.
Nobody stays at the absolute peak forever. What happens when we inevitably face a setback or a massive failure?
This is where the ego does its most vicious work. It turns a standard, manageable defeat into total psychological destruction. And it all comes down to the collision between our identity and our outcomes.
Oh, I see where this is going. If my entire sense of self-worth, my actual identity as a human being, is built entirely on the premise that I am a winner or that I am the smartest person in the room,
then a failure cannot just be an unsuccessful outcome. It becomes a fatal attack on your existence.
because if I fail, who am I?
Exactly. If you are your success, then failing means you no longer exist. The cognitive dissonance is just too much for the brain to handle. That is why ego makes failure so devastating.
Right.
instead of looking at a collapsed project and saying, okay, the data shows our marketing strategy was flawed. Let's adjust and pivot.
The ego screams, "This is unfair. Someone else sabotaged me."
The audience is just too stupid to understand my genius.
Right, right.
The ego will literally invent wild conspiracies and burn bridges just to protect the fragile identity it constructed. It completely paralyzes your ability to adapt and recover.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because diagnosing the problem is one thing, but fixing it is another.
True.
One of the reviewers from our source material pointed out something I think we all feel. They read the book and honestly noted that taking this graceful approach to failure is brutally difficult.
It's incredibly hard.
When you pour 3 years of your life, your savings, and your heart into a project and it fails spectacularly, someone telling you the effort is enough feels like a slap in the face.
Oh, it's infuriating.
So how do we actually do this? How do we practically separate our self-worth from a crushing defeat?
It is the hardest thing in the world, which is exactly why Holiday leans so heavily into the Stoic framework to provide a tactical solution.
Okay, the Stoic.
Yeah. To understand how to survive failure, we have to clearly define what Stoicism actually is in practice. At its absolute core, Stoicism is the radical, ruthless separation of what is in your control from what is not in your control.
It's the dichotomy of control.
Yes. You cannot control the macroeconomy. You cannot control if a competitor plays dirty. You cannot control if the algorithm hides your work or if the public simply rejects what you built.
All external.
All external. If you tie your happiness to those external variables, you will always be a victim of circumstance. But the Stoics realize you have absolute, unyielding control over one thing: your response to the circumstance.
So it's about intercepting the internal monologue the moment the failure happens.
It is an active, conscious interception. When the failure hits, the ego immediately asks, why did this happen to me? The Stoic framework forces you to change the question to, what can I learn from this?
Okay, shifting the focus.
Right. If your identity is tied to the pursuit of mastery rather than the applause of winning, then a loss is just raw data.
Just date.
It exposes the weaknesses in your process that your previous successes allowed you to lazily ignore. The failure becomes the exact curriculum you need to improve, rather than some devastating judgment on your soul.
It's reframing the obstacle into the actual path forward.
Exactly.
But if ego attacks us at all 3 stages, right? If it makes us arrogant at the starting line, dangerously entitled at the finish line, and then completely shattered when we stumble, what is our daily armor?
Yeah, how do we survive it?
Right. How do we walk through our careers without letting this parasite take over?
It requires an incredible vigilance, a state that one of the reviewers brilliantly described as a specific kind of sobriety.
Sobriety.
Yeah. They noted that in modern culture, we talk a lot about maintaining sobriety against substances, right? Drugs or alcohol.
Sure.
But maintaining sobriety against the intoxicating effects of our own ego is arguably harder and more necessary. It's a daily, minute-by-minute battle.
That is such a striking image. Sobriety against ego. Every time we get a promotion, every time someone praises our intellect, every time we get a rush of likes on a post, we are being handed an intoxicant.
We are.
It feels incredible in the moment, but it impairs our judgment just as thoroughly as anything else.
Yeah, and just as with any sobriety, the defense isn't a one-time decision you make. It is a daily practice.
Right.
The ultimate synthesis of Holiday's work is an important distinction about humility.
Which is?
Controlling your ego does not mean thinking less of yourself. It isn't about forced self-deprecation or pretending you don't have skills.
Oh, I like that.
It means thinking less about yourself.
Thinking less about yourself. Wow. Sort of taking the camera off selfie mode.
Exactly. Pointing the spotlight outward. You focus entirely on the work in front of you, on the team you are supporting, and the objective reality of the problem you are solving.
So character over reputation.
Always.
Mm.
Focus on the work, be humble in your aspirations, be gracious in success, and absolutely resilient in failure.
We don't need the external x-ray showing where the world wronged us because we are too busy doing the daily, granular work of keeping our own internal house in order.
Well said.
We at sharingstoriespodcast bring you insightful book summaries. This content is supported by plots4movies.com, an AI-enabled book trailer platform where you can watch 1-minute trailers of books to understand them better before you buy them.
You know, this raises an important question to leave everyone with as they reflect on their own ambitions.
Let's hear it.
If our modern culture is explicitly built to reward the loudest egos and the biggest personal brands, what becomes of the quiet, humble worker over the span of a lifetime? Does the work eventually outshine the applause?
That is definitely something to chew on as we navigate our own projects and setbacks this week. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Please remember to subscribe and support the channel. You can buy the book through the link in the description, and make sure to comment below with the book you want discussed in the next podcast. Until then, keep the ego in check and keep doing the work.